Hey, this is a Hakawati production. My guest today is the founder of Plutus Capital Advisory in London. He's also behind a collection of unique experiential hotels called Arthaus, including properties in Berkshire, England, Negev, Switzerland, Havana, Cuba, and now Beirut, Lebanon, where he and his wife Zoe recently relocated. Yep, that's right. A wealthy hotelier who has lived in some of the world's most beautiful places now chooses to live in Beirut, a city that many now see as a hopeless case. But let's recap. In case you missed it, Lebanon's been a little crazy lately, to say the least. First, the corrupt government here was forced out following months of massive demonstrations beginning in October 2019, and that government, while it was in power, was so busy, it seems, finding ways to profit from day-to-day activities and controlling the mafia-style water and electricity businesses, while its citizens lived without basic human rights, that they completely ignored state employees who warned them multiple times that there were dangerous stockpiles of explosive material at the port of Beirut. And this blatant neglect, as we all know, resulted in one of the most powerful non-nuclear blasts in the history of the world. Over the next few months, there have been at least 4 mysterious assassinations, which included a military photographer, 2 army colonels, and the head of an ethics and fraud committee at Byblos Bank, one of the largest banks in Lebanon. One of these people was shot to death in broad daylight, and the others killed by a blow to the head. Let's not forget, this is a massive criminal case that has yet to be resolved, and those responsible need to be tried in a court of law. But there's a lot more to this story and to this case than meets the eye. The Central Bank of Lebanon, overseen by Riyad Salameh, has been the gatekeeper for a financial system constructed of Ponzi schemes by the political class. They've now run their course, mostly at the expense of the population who kept their life savings in the country's banks, unlike the political elite who took their millions out of the country just in the nick of time. The currency in Lebanon has been pegged to the US dollar since 1997, but it has now lost most of its value, and at least 70% of the population now lives way below the poverty line. Most people here can no longer access their money in the bank. A mobile phone that used to cost $1,000 now costs the equivalent of around $8,000 based on the currency exchange rate from just over a year ago, the rate at which most salaries are still being paid. So why would an investment banker want to not only live in this failed country, but also do business here? Why would he choose to do that? I don't know. Is it the amazing sunshine? The tabouleh? I could go on guessing, but I'll let him do the rest of the talking today. Joining me in catastrophic and beautiful Lebanon, please welcome Nabil Debs. Hi, Nabil. Thanks for coming on the show.
Hi, Nadia. Thank you for inviting me.
From an investment banker's perspective, what are your thoughts on this financial crisis in Lebanon?
It is a financial crisis. It's not an economical crisis. I mean, yes, one drags the other, but the economy was strong before we get the liquidity issues. The country is rich in assets. It's very wealthy in assets because they've never privatized. I mean, the electricity, the water, the licenses for the mobile phones. It can turn around very, very quickly. The financial crisis started not last year. It started a long time ago. For example, when we wanted to do our projects here, liquidity has always been an issue. With the best credit in the world, with the best liquidity outside of the country, trying to borrow money here is first was very, very expensive, but also all the liquidity was pumped up by the system, by the central bank selling bonds at very high levels in order to high yields in order to to refinance itself, and also to finance a totally corrupt and inefficient political system. And so that is the key. It's more of, for me, it's more of a political, structural problem than it is an economical one. So should the liquidity come back, you can have a very quick turnaround, very, very extremely fast turnaround, because life is very cheap. For anybody, a foreigner to Lebanon who comes to live here, you find that things are cheap. They're probably 50% cheaper than elsewhere. It happens everywhere. You have those mega inflation. You go to, where had you been to Greece in 2000 and I don't know when it was.
2010.
You would find it very cheap. Real estate was cheap. Life was cheap, except for the people who lived there, because they're starving. They were starving. But any country in the world where you reach that point, you devalue. You call the IMF. You borrow money. You restructure, and 2, 3, 4 years down the line, your economy has been cleaned out and things go back.
Actually, in Greece, it took 10 years.
10 years to go back to, yes, and they're not totally out of the wood. But here it's different because there is absolutely no effort to restructure. I mean, it's blocked. It's the system stops it. It blocks it. I mean, I'm not saying to go back to the way it was in the early 2000s, but to go back to a normal, which was maybe 3 years ago. But if you put money in the system here, tourism first is very, very cheap. If you have a pizza in London, it would cost you as much as a fantastic 3-course meal here with great quality products. It is cheap. It used to be expensive because it's a small country. There's a lot of people. There's a lot of money around. There used to be a lot of money around, so prices were already quite high. But now you're at a fraction of that. You maybe 20 cents on the dollar to where it used to be. So for tourism, it is cheap. It's very attractive to come here. The other question is, okay, so from a financial point of view, it can get back to life if there's a political solution or a political understanding or restructuring. We had a revolution trying to get rid of the old system. That's still latent. It's not dead. It's going to happen. But there is also a risk that because of what we said before, the country being wealthy in terms of in terms of assets, in terms of national assets, electricity, phones, licenses, all that. The day you are forced to sell them, because there is a corrupt system in place, you can find yourself like in Russia, where people bought the state assets for nothing. And guess who has the money to do that? It's the politicians who have been, stealing of the pockets of the economy for years. And so the risk is that using the stolen money, they would buy those assets at a low price, of course, because it would be valued at a breakage value, and rip off the country even more. So it's good that we have the assets. It's good that there's no intention yet to sell it or to liquefy it, to privatize it, because privatization today is probably the worst thing that could happen, because it would be at totally low prices, and it would reinforce the corrupt system. So what we need really is a political solution, is a political restructuring, and all the rest will follow.
Do you mean restructuring or complete makeover, including changing all the parts?
It's changing all the parts, but it cannot happen overnight. It's not, there's no immediate solution. Probably need a new understanding. We need to have, the key is the parliament. There will be elections in a year and a half or 2 years. If there is a strong enough opposition or a new, if you like, independent movement outside of the political parties who can at least try to get elected and get a blocking majority or get any sort of strong minority, at least we would be it would be the start of changing things around. It's not a question of just changing a government, or it's the whole everything goes through Parliament. All the laws are voted through Parliaments. Things are changed at the Parliament level. It's a parliamentary system. So that is the key, really, is to get little by little gaining control of the future of the laws, and from there you can restructure. From there you can change things. It will take time.
There will be no incentive to do that, though. If you propose or suggest that if there was an influx of money, that the financial crisis could turn around quite quickly. So if that were to happen by miracle, which is not happening currently because Riyad Salameh is not handing over the documents that were requested, presumably because that would be the damnation of those very people that we're talking about, the pieces, the parts. If that were to happen, then there would be no incentive for the parts to be changed or for...
Exactly. I mean, the worst, yeah, exactly. The worst thing is if the money comes first. The money has to come last.
Yeah.
Or it has to come with an understanding, with a change, with the restructuring. It has to be conditional. It has to come with a change of the system, with accountability, with, if money comes now, it will only benefit the politicians and give them another sort of, a few years of life. And that is, in a way, it's a worst thing that could happen. We need a longer term solution. We need an infrastructural change. I mean, it doesn't matter which politician, which kind of line of politics is in line. What matters is really the governance and to have a system in place that is strong enough to be able to reduce corruption. Corruption never disappears. It exists at every level, everywhere, all over the world. But to reduce it and to make it more to make the funds available more palatable and more sort of available to the investors and to the business people. Absolutely no money goes into business. Everything goes into banks and real estate, and they feed each other. So the government previous governments for the last 20 years been made by real estate developers, banks, and politicians, and they're usually the same people. So there is no real economy.
Yeah, it's interesting to think about where that money would go instead and how that would affect the real estate, because we know we have like an oversupply of real estate also currently in the country. But I like this plan that we're kind of hatching, or I like your ideas about it. It's quite organized and it makes sense. I guess the first thing that needs to happen, as you mentioned, is to have this kind of organized opposition, which is what has been lacking. They're always very fragmented. So this is really what needs to happen, an organized opposition that has a common purpose, which should be the country.
No, the worst thing is that nobody has a program. I mean, you look around, as much as you read, there is nobody comes with a program. You need a shadow government. You need people in the opposition talking, at least, to say, okay, this, I wouldn't do this, I would do that, and come out with a program, come out with ideas, and then you can criticize, say like, okay, let's maybe, had you done this and that, this would never happen. So there need to be proposals. There need to be people talking to each other. There need to be real sort of communication with the existing politicians. They need to turn around, and they're going to disappear. It's a question of time. But if new people want to come in place, they need to have something to offer. And for the time being, all you hear is, calling people thieves and theft and scandals. Yes, it's a necessity to do that, but you also need to have a program. You need to show, what does the IMF want? How can the IMF help? People are very willing to help. People love Lebanon. We're close to Europe. We're close to the world. Lebanese people everywhere. The diaspora is huge. But there is no trust, and rightfully so, because there is nobody to trust here. So I think that's why we need to start getting organizers internally and get programs, get people to come forward.
And I think part of this agreement and this new plan has to also include some kind of follow-up on the Beirut explosion. I think that should be part of the solution, and it might, in fact, be part of the key to... how can I put it? It might be the key to kind of weeding out the bad seeds in the current government, because I don't know. I don't know. I'm just Canadian.
Yeah, yes, it's a sinking ship when you're trying to put our fingers in the holes, but the holes are getting bigger and bigger, and
Are you hopeful though?
yeah, I'm always hopeful. I mean, I'm by nature. I think it would. It. I mean, I really believe in the people here. I believe in the diaspora. I believe in people who are educated. They travel in a way. It's not a bad thing. I mean, when people say okay, the young people are leaving the country, which is great. I mean, they have to. It's. You cannot be ambitious and stay in an economical crisis where you're kind of surrounded by negativity and the port exposure and thing. It's turned into kind of a retirement country for people for people of middle-aged people who want to have a great quality of life and everything. But there's nothing for the young. So it's great that the youngs get out, they get the experience, they get slapped around, and they come back here with education, with ideas, with funds, but they need to have an infrastructure. And I think I'm really hopeful that in a few years we will be in a position where we have the capacity, we have the technology, we have it doesn't take much. I mean, why do the young people have to leave? Why do the doctors? We have a fantastic medical system. Before the crisis, there was medical tourism was one of the it was a destination for a lot of people to come for. Would it be for plastic surgery or for? I mean, it's a great country. It's a huge potential, and that's why I'm hopeful for the future, if you like, from that sense. I mean, the political differences will always be here. You'll always have people thinking differently. It's part of the charm of the place is that you have such opposed system. You have people wearing miniskirts, and you have people wearing, covered, and will always be like that.
So you have 4 hotels around the world, right? And why don't you tell everyone, first off, what the Arthaus concept is all about?
Okay, the concept is really art centric. So the idea when we started is to create a cultural roundtable where people can come exhibit visual art, show, talk, debates. Talk about their passion. The concept is a non-profit, so the art part is a non-profit, and around that to give a mood for hotel, for lounge concept where you have rooms, restaurant, bars, mixology, anything that is socially agreeable and where we would benefit from meeting. It's a meeting place as such. So the idea was that we have, Zoe and I, my wife, we're very lucky. We were lucky in finding places, amazing places, and turning them into places where we lived, where we spend a lot of time. So where we have our own network of friends, of people who share the same values, same ideas. And from there, also we collect art. The houses where we lived, we usually have our art pieces. And the idea was, what do we do with it? And the idea of creating hotels came first in the UK, in Maidenhead, where we have Victorian Folly by the river, a very beautiful house. When we decided, we thought about selling it. There's a village called Bray next to it. It's a culinary village where you have 2-3-star Michelins, very famous 1-star pubs. And those guys, when they knew we want to sell, say, no, we have clients coming from London, 40 minutes away. They don't want to go back. We usually send them to the Holiday Inn. Why don't you do, it's a beautiful house, there's into a hotel, and we'll help you. And that's how we started. So they helped us with anything from bed linen to breakfast and that was amazing. So that was in 2015, and that was a trial. Following that, we moved to renovating. We had renovated our house, beautiful house, family house in Beirut, and it had a few houses surrounding it. So also part of what we had, and it turned into a social project in a way where, because in Beirut there is no social housing program, so the usually social housing is on the landowner. So on the private individual. So the idea was to relocate those people and make sure they were happy to move out and to go to places. Not just a question of giving them money, because they didn't know what to do and maybe they would spend it wrongly, but to help them acquire their own space. And there were maybe 12 or 13 families that we had to one by one, take the other hand, show around, and make sure that they were happy to move out, which happened. We also had the Red Cross who were happy to get the donation and move out. So the idea was that, okay, we have this prime, old, beautiful properties, and it was worth the investment and putting it back together. It was also great fun because it's allowed us to be creative. We love space. It gives us, for me, at this stage in my life, it gave me the idea that, it was like a blank volumes where you had to reuse the volume and turn them into the way we wanted to live, not the way an architect would want you to live. This was very, very personal, the way we did it. And that was probably the best few years of my life, trying to go around, recuperation shops, completing, getting the old furniture, refurnishing it, so solving problems, and that was how it all started. So the concept moved from art exhibition and talks, and the concept of the 19th century salons in France, where people come and debate, and artists come and they argue with each other.
So can you describe Arthaus Beirut so that people can kind of create a mental image of what it looks like? You kind of did, but it's really a unique space. The entrance is in an alley off one of the main streets, Jemaise, which is a very vibrant area. Nowadays, it's kind of recuperating after the explosion, but it's come back to life, I would say, to some degree. And your entrance is in an alley, and when you enter the gates, it's kind of like you're entering another world. Can you just describe it briefly, like architecturally?
Yes, I mean the Jemaise is one of the, if not the most interesting areas in Beirut, because it's part of the old Beirut. It's part of the Roman Beirut. I mean, the Greek gates were like a few hundred yards away, where Paul is. And when we came in 2010, it was already, it had boomed. It had bars. It had, it was gone too far. It had karaoke bars. How it becomes. But then, as everywhere, real estate become more expensive and rents become more expensive. So they moved out of the way a little bit further toward Mar Michael, where closer to the port. And so when you arrive to Arthaus, you come into something that's very typical, that is low-built, beautiful 19th century houses. And Arthaus is a collection of houses. So it's really 5 buildings. Out of the 5 buildings, we're using 4 of them. There is a garden surrounding it. Our neighbors have kept their houses, so it's been protected in a way by themselves, by the families who live there, and they're not moving out, which is a great thing. So, which is a great advantage, because in Beirut you have a lot of beautiful old houses, but then they built those kind of high rises next to it, and it kills it. So it doesn't look like anything anymore. While here it's totally airy. So from at least from 3 sides. The main house is where we used to live. We built it. We turned it into sort of modern living space, using, of course, the volume that existed. So we didn't alter the volume, which was the main goal, is to keep the features, keep the volumes, and from there adapt it to the way we live. We reused everything we could, and it turned out it was one of the most pleasant houses I lived in. That was really, really wonderful. And there are 3 other houses further back on the other side of the garden, and those are also part of the project. So they all linked from under the garden. There are links underground. And so the idea was to keep a peaceful outside space, and any movement, whether it be the kitchen, moving from one house to the other, everything happened through the basement. There's also an old well. So there's a well room that is a multi-purpose room that's underground with a fantastic skylight. So it's a huge circulation. It's very much low level, which makes it, of course, very, very unique in its environment.
Yeah. it has a great feeling. The place has a great feeling. And your staff are so professional and friendly, and you furnished it in such a cool way. You're a collector of antiques and art, and you and your wife, I guess, have a great eye. So you've kept the character, but it's still in a really cool way. You've incorporated, mid-century and vintage pieces, colorful, beautiful. I love the place personally, clearly.
No.
So how's tourism going? How busy is the hotel been? You guys opened finally in November. Yeah.
That's right. So but just before, on what you said is totally true. And because the house, the place was done as a house. It's somewhere where we live. So all the elements are there for a house living. So the collection we have has been since I'm 14. I've been buying art, and it's all in here. The furniture is vintage furniture, either from before when my great grandparents lived here, and it's been added to in the 1950s and 60s. So everything is genuine. It's genuinely placed, and nothing is made to just to look nice on a photo. It's genuine pieces, and you have that feeling, as you said, when you walk in. It is a house. It's a lived-in place. To go back to your question about tourism, look, if you ask me, about 18 months ago, Beirut still is a very sexy destination. People love to come here. It's totally out of the kind of usual holiday destination, because you have, again, there's a huge content in terms of archaeology, in terms of people, of designers, and it was really booming. So we had a great interest from the foreign press. We need to cater for people who come here. Usually, ideally for us, it's high net worth travelers, or also the other profile is people who are more intellectual travelers. So they come here for the history. They come here it's not like going to Dubai or going somewhere where you have, or the Bahamas, where you have a set kind of things to do, and that's it. Because it's really a white canvas for any traveler who comes here. You can do whatever they want. But what we thought, a lot of people come and they're curious, and they don't have that connection. So they rely on you to tell them what to do. So we said, okay, no, we have to do something better than that. So we have to create this super concierge service, in a way, if you like. So before you come to Beirut, we send you a questionnaire, say, what are your areas of interest? So assuming if it is, for example, archaeology, then we can say, okay, listen, we've got archaeologist friends, and they're very keen to show and to help, and they're working on such and such site. You can go and see the mosaics being kind of cleared, or this old kind of second century church has been renovated. And so we can direct you towards your area of interest. If you want to see such or such designer, we call them up and set up a one-on-one. It might be, war tourism, where you can go and see sites where things happen or have happened, or maybe talk to refugees in refugee camps to see the way they live. So there is a huge amount of things to do. And if you're held by the hand and taken to where you want to be, we sort of, we use our network for that, because we do live, we're very active. We absolutely participate in every kind of activity that we're curious people. And if you are curious and you want to come to Lebanon, we can definitely help you and set up your trip from A to Z.
That's amazing. It sounds it's like a concierge service on steroids, basically, like so much more inclusive than the average concierge service. War tourism, where in the world else would you be able to do that? And not that it's I'm smiling, but it's not funny at all. It's kind of terrible.
You have to be. It is. You have to be very careful, because people, it's not, it can be easily transformed into like going to a zoo to see. No, it's not that. It's we have to be very, very careful in what we do. But people are genuinely happy to show the condition in which they live, and so we have to have this approach. If you're visiting a refugee camp, you go with a certain amount you're going with a certain amount of compassion, and you're trying to see how can I help, what can I bring, And if you go with that in mind, people are very open. There's amazing musicians, composers. There is, there are also very happy things that one can do while in Beirut, and that's what we're more famous for, is for the non-stop social gatherings, parties, beach. There was an article because we discussed with a friend the fact that you can ski in Beirut, and it's very true because we love sealskin randonnées and walking around mountains, and there's a huge amount to do this. So we also organize that. You can get you a guide, we can go ourselves with you. It's that sort of image that we would like to export for the foreign travelers.
Well, it's a country of contrasts. We know that there's the most beautiful things in the world and the most horrifying things in the world exist in this tiny piece of land near the Mediterranean Sea. But let me ask you this.
And the people as well, you have the best and the worst people. So that's you
true.
Can see in
Absolutely.
The politics, you can see in
You're right.
And the funny thing, Nadia, is I thought that having lived in London for so long, that the British people were eccentric. Actually, they're very, very mild compared to the Lebanese, because how eccentricity is a totally different takes a totally different meaning. People are extremely, extremely eccentric in their ways and the thing that they do.
In Beirut, especially, yes, it's a whole other level, a whole other level. And you're right. And then there's so many wonderful. The average person that you encounter in this country is just outstandingly wonderful. Like I hear even friends, Lebanese, who live abroad now, and every time they visit, they're just so happy when they meet, a taxi driver, an Uber driver, and they remark how always generous and gracious and often well educated they are in the conversations. So I can see why it's difficult, despite the horrible circumstances. It's a difficult place to leave because you don't find these things anywhere else in the world. But it's always wonderful to come across people like you who are so passionate about life and about the things that they're doing. And Beirut is lucky to have you, by the way. I hope you're planning on sticking around.
Yeah, I'm not going anywhere. I mean, that's very kind of you. I'm not sure they want me, but... that long, but
they should be so they should count their lucky stars.
It's coming to Beirut was a choice. We were not sure, but we got totally sort of absorbed here, and it's one of those places where I'm happy to come back, and I'm not always very happy to leave, because I do travel a lot. At the end of the day, it became home. I never lived here because of the war. I was a kid. I mean, I'm Lebanese. I was born here. With the war, we grew up in Paris and worked in London. So it's the first time since 2010 where I live for living in Lebanon.
Yeah, I feel the same way. Ditto. I like coming here and I don't like leaving. So Nabil, it was really great talking to you. Unfortunately, we have to end it here. Thank you so much, and best of luck with all your projects.
Thanks, and see you soon, hopefully.
That's it for now. I hope you enjoyed the show, and I hope it somehow helps keep the Port of Beirut explosion in the public conversation. Take care. See you again soon.